All right, so thank you guys for coming to this talk, How to Eat for Better Health and Athletic Performance. We're going to talk about several things tonight, and I just want to thank you for spending your time with us because I know it's a busy time of year, and for baseballers, it's the off season, but Jason's out for basketball practice, and a lot of other sports are still going on. Thank you for coming. I think your health is extremely important, and not only just for athletic performance and health, but there's a lot of factors that we need to consider these days that I just want to name a few of them. It's harder these days to get scholarships for sports. It's harder to stand out. In general, we're seeing an increase in mental health issues for adults and kids. And that really breaks my heart, especially to see kids with so much anxiety these days. The thing is that we're not really taught about from the doctors or anybody that the foods we eat can make a huge difference in our anxiety and mental health. We're going to talk about some things that might be helpful for that as well. There are a lot more toxins in our world today between the air pollution, but like electromagnetic fields, plastics, all the just time on screens versus outdoors. So when you're layering up all the toxins, it's making our bodies work harder just to function like it should. And then, of course, we've seen a lot of athletes on pro and college athletes having cardiac arrest and other collapses on the field. And it's in the spotlight. Our health is in the spotlight. And I think it's time to take it more seriously. And just to give you a little introduction about myself and why I'm doing this, for anybody that's not familiar with me, I'm Natalie Gensits, Coach Jamie's wife and mom to Ian and Jason. I'm a wellness writer, so I write website copy, landing pages, ebooks, things like that for wellness providers that are trying to connect with the clients that need them, the people that need their care. So my goal in general is to help more people be well. And for my work, that's how I do it. Outside of my work, I'm doing things like this and just trying to offer other education and products that help people be well. And this is a lot to do with my own wellness journey because I've done the writing in the past. That's my marketing and advertising is my trade, but I started focusing on wellness about 7 years ago because of my own wellness and health issues. And I'll talk more about that a little bit later. But what happened was I ended up writing a book about eating healthier because of all the research I'd been doing and all the changes I've witnessed from changing the foods that I ate. That's where it led me to do what I'm doing today. When the kids and Jamie were at an event, a clinic with Coach Rick, I think it was a year and a half ago, they came home and Jamie was like, oh my gosh, you should have heard this guy talking. Dan was talking about nutrition and he was saying a lot of the things that you say, and you would have loved it. And the kids were like, yeah. They were telling me some of the things and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to meet this guy. Maybe I can partner up with him somehow. And I finally reached out to him a few months ago and he was gracious enough to agree to do this. So I'm really excited. Dan's got a wealth of knowledge and I know he could fill up way more than the time that we have tonight, but we're going to try to keep it to an hour. If we can certainly answer questions as we go. If it's a longer answer, maybe we'll table that till the end in case we need to go a little bit over and the other people need to leave right at 8. Disclaimers, we are not nutritionists, dietitians, or doctors. We're not trained in nutrition per se. We've just done a lot of research and have our own experiences. So we're going to share with you from that. And we both have sets of beliefs around our ideals of ways of eating based somewhat on our faith. So you may hear us mention that. It's not a talk about faith at all. I'm just putting that out there. That's where that's where a lot of our belief comes from. I think that's the admin stuff that I wanted to get through. And I just want to go ahead and get started. I want to introduce to you guys our guest speaker here, Dan Leatherman. Dan is a former MLB pitcher and he played for the Minnesota Twins and the Washington Nationals, if you didn't notice. He also played for the Hagerstown Suns, Potomac Nationals, FCC, and West Virginia U. He's gotten several awards over his career. And Dan, would you please introduce yourself a little bit more? Tell us a little bit more personal about you. And what was your favorite award or milestone in your baseball career before we get started? And then just go ahead and delve into your awesome knowledge that you want to share with us.
Sure. So I grew up in Walkersville, Maryland. Went to Walkersville High School. Played at Furtick Community College. Full scholarship to West Virginia. Was there for a year. Was fortunate to sign a contract with the Minnesota Twins. Spent 2 years in their organization, and then ended up moving over to the Washington Nationals organization, which was nice because it was closer to home, and all of the minor league teams that I was playing for were all close to home as well. So I had a 5-year career. It was a good career. I made it as high as AAA. I was very close to getting that phone call. Unfortunately, an injury ended my career, which is we're going to touch base on a little bit more here in a bit. But I would say my favorite award, I don't even know if you consider it an award, but back in, I think it was 2018, I was inducted into the Hall of Fame at Furtick Community College, which I never thought that I would be inducted to any kind of Hall of Fame. And so that was a huge honor. And I was very pleased and grateful for everything that they had there for me at the ceremony and things like that. So I would say that would be my favorite award, because all the other ones, they're just performance based. And I was just doing my job at that point. So
That's awesome. That's really cool. See you on the wall somewhere over there at FCC.
Yeah, I think if you go in where the gym is, they probably have something up. It was myself and 2 other guys that I played with at the time that were inducted at the same time. So it was nice to see. I think one was able to be there and one wasn't. But it was nice to get caught up and see guys after so many years of not seeing them. But it was a great ceremony. It was one of the memories that I have of recent with my family being there, that a lot of them are no longer with us. It's one of the most recent memories I remember of everybody being together. So
That's awesome. Okay. So do you want to get us started just talking about your ideal way of eating, and maybe you mentioned your injury. Maybe
sure, yeah. So what I'll do is I'll go off of where this came from for me and what gave some validity to it in my experience. And if that's okay, is that kind of the route we want to go here?
Sure.
Okay, great. I actually I had a few jobs outside of baseball. I never really knew what I wanted to do with my life outside of baseball. So I've moved job to job trying to figure out what to do. And I did spend 8 years in pipeline with a pipeline company. And I had my own workshop and was able to speak to my coworker who was in Texas, who's trained me. And we literally, for almost every day, for hours on end, we would talk in earpieces while we worked, and we would just talk about things. And we were able to touch base on every aspect of life. And one of the things that he brought up a few years into us talking is something that he started to discover was, excuse me, my dogs are going crazy. Hey, that's enough. So I'm gonna walk while I talk. And so he was able to go over everything and kind of give me a basis as to what he was talking about and what he was discovering. And one of it was, and because we were, biblically based, I'm a Christian and so is he. And he started off with, hey, think about Genesis, think about Adam and Eve, think about that story, think about what was in the Garden of Eden to eat for Adam and Eve that's documented. And I was like, it was just fruit, just like anybody else would answer. Eve wasn't supposed to eat the apple, things like that. We know how that went. But they were supposed to actually live forever in the Garden of Eden on fruit. And I was like, huh, that actually makes some sense. And it wasn't until Adam and Eve were kicked out of the garden that they actually had to make their own food. They had to grow their own food. They had to hunt for their food, things like that, if you follow the story. And that's where I realized that we're only supposed to eat outside of fruit in moderation. Now, obviously, there's a lot of factors involved where I want a steak today and I might want a steak again tomorrow. But at the same time, our basis is fruit. Even looking at our teeth, we don't have teeth, a cat or a carnivore animal style. We're not supposed to be chewing into that meat and things like that. Just going into all of that, there's a lot we're going to uncover here. But I'll get back to that in a second. But so I got into talking about this with him, and it was just something we touched base on a daily basis. And I started making changes in my life the moment that we started talking about it. And because I realized how far off I had gotten diet wise, I wasn't in the greatest of health. And I took some years off when I got done playing baseball because it was always, you got to eat healthy, work out all the time. I didn't want to step foot in the gym for a while. I wanted to eat what I wanted to and things like that. And I definitely saw a change in myself just based off of how I changed from going from baseball to not playing. I was having some medical issues at the time, and he was like, look, man, he got me looking at a guy named Dr. Robert Morse on YouTube, who's a holistic doctor. He used to be a regular doctor, and now he's a holistic doctor. And I saw what he was doing with the whole fruit aspect. And the basis behind it is you're obviously getting your hydration from fruit. You're trying to eat as many watery fruits as possible, your watermelons, your grapes, your berries, your melons, things like that. Obviously, banana is a good fruit, and bananas are full of what is it? Potassium, is that what it is, for keeping you limber and not pulling muscles? But mainly the whole ideology is behind the fruit is staying hydrated and getting the nutrients from the fruit. I started making a change myself, and I had, at the time, full disclosure, I had a cyst on my back. And I went a full month just to test out his theory because I wasn't completely on board at the time. Obviously, I try to back everything up with scripture, and it was making sense to me, but I still wanted to test it out just like anybody else would. So I went a month straight. I didn't do all fruit. I did fruit in the morning when I got to the office. I did fruit and a salad every day for lunch. And then I would do fruit in the evening and maybe another salad or something along those lines. So it wasn't full on fruit, but within a month, that cyst was gone. I didn't have to go to the doctors and get it drained. I didn't have to do anything, and it didn't come back. It was pretty crazy. And then it didn't come back right away. Once I went back to eating what I normally was eating, it did eventually come back because it was just a sensitive area where lymph wants to get into a pocket there. So this is when I saw it firsthand for myself. I passed it on to my kids. I passed it on to my wife. They thought I was crazy. And so that was one thing to solidify it for me. Like he's onto something here. And then my son came along, and he was having problems with dehydration. He had passed out at school. He had passed out in our home and ended up with a concussion. And I started thinking, like, why is he having this problem? We're a healthy family. These kids have never had any kind of ailments, issues. What is going on? And I messaged my friend Tom, my ex-coworker at the time, or my coworker at the time. He's now my ex-coworker. And I said, dude, what is going on here? He's having this problem. He's, look, man, what's his normal diet? And I'm like, okay. And I went through his normal diet. He's a mac and cheese eater. He eats chicken nuggets, mac and cheese, like basically all the kids' foods. And he's, dude, what does he drink while he's working out? And I'm like, Gatorade, just like any other kid. He's, oh my gosh. You need to get him off of that. That's your problem. And I'm like thinking to myself, why aren't other kids having the same problem? Why aren't other kids passing out left and right? And maybe it's just he's special. I don't know. Maybe it was a way God was working in my life that I needed to make a change for him, and other people, they'll see it later. I don't know. But what I started doing with him was, because at first he would start eating some fruit, but just to make sure he got what he needed during a game and he wasn't passing out during games, I took frozen fruit and I was putting it in his water. So I was doing raspberries, blueberries, frozen grapes, frozen strawberries, and I would just add a mixture to his water. And it was like basically juiced up electrolyte fruit water, and lo and behold, like, he stopped having problems. He hasn't passed out since. Not a speck of dehydration whatsoever since we've made that change. Now his diet's 65-70% fruit, and he eats fruit with everything. And I'll tell you, if you take one look at him, he's tall, thin, not I think he went to the doctors the other day for a checkup, and I think he might have just walked in the door, but I'm not sure. They said he had the lowest cholesterol count that they've ever seen in a kid, which is amazing for an 18-17-18-year-old kid who, with the food we have nowadays that it's available and how bad it is for us with all the additives and things like that. So it just goes to show how long he's been eating that way. It's been 5 or 6 years now at the least that he's been eating that way and taking care of himself. And he very rarely has injuries. He's been healthy the majority of his life when it comes to sports and things like that. So I got to thinking, once we fixed that issue, I'm like, maybe this had something to do with my career. And Natalie, I actually just thought about this today. I never had an injury my whole life growing up, like shoulder injury, arm injury. I was a pitcher, so my arm was like my moneymaker. And I never had arm problems. My whole college career, my whole high school career, I was never out for a period of time unless it was like just normal soreness and I needed an extra day. But I never had tendon strains. I never had anything torn. I never broke anything like playing baseball where I couldn't pitch from the act of pitching. And my last year of professional baseball, I tore my labrum, and I'd never had a shoulder problem, elbow problem, nothing. Now, why is that? And I think it was because when you're in the minor leagues, for those of you that don't know, we do not make much money. We're below poverty almost. I think, the full disclosure, the most I ever made, which was in AAA, was $2,400 a month. Before that, it was the average I made was between $1,300 and $1,600 a month playing baseball. So we didn't have money to eat well. Even on the road, we had very little money to work with. So we had to go to fast food restaurants, and we had to eat peanut butter jellies and ramen noodles and stuff that's just awful for you. And I feel like that my body eventually just had enough and broke down. Call it acidosis is what I like to call it. When you're not alkaline in the body, you're acidic. And most of our ailments that we have in our bodies is due to acidity, because we're not acidic creatures. We're not, and going back to talking about carnivores and things like that, we're not carnivores. Otherwise, we would have acidic stomachs. And we're not. We're supposed to be alkaline. So your cats, your carnivores, they have acidic stomachs that can break down that meat that they're eating constantly. We can't do that. It actually takes 6 to 7 days for meat to break down into your system. And then you think about it from a vegetable standpoint. A lot of people are like, I won't eat fruit. I'll just eat vegetables. I'll be a vegetarian, but I'll have some fruit, but mainly vegetables. And I'm like, okay, you have to look at it from this standpoint. You have a lot of vegetables that are slow digesting. All right. We're not herbivores either, because we don't have multiple stomachs. Cows have multiple stomachs. That's why they can eat all the vegetables and grass that they want. We can't do that. We can't break it down that fast. So you think about it like, all right, if vegetables break down slowly in our system and meat breaks down slowly in our system, there has to be something that breaks down quickly. Well, actually, fruit will break down within 45 minutes. Yeah, tell me, go have a bowl of fruit in the morning and tell me you're not in the bathroom within 45 minutes. That's my ideology, where all of this came from for me. And I've been passing it on to my son and anybody who will listen. I don't obviously willingly go out of the way and try to just bash people with information. If somebody does ask for help or says they have a problem, I'll say, I think it might be this, and lead them in that direction of asking more questions. I know a lot of kids nowadays, from an athlete standpoint, they're like, I never get full of a fruit. I'll eat fruit and I'm not full. Well, you're not supposed to feel full. You're supposed to graze throughout the day. Whoever came up with the whole ideology of breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I'm not sure what they were thinking. Maybe they were part of the problem. I don't know. You're supposed to graze throughout the day, which is why when you have fruit that digests so quickly, you grab a handful, you eat it, you go do something, you come back, grab another handful, and you're constantly doing that throughout the day. Now it's the worldly thinking of it is we're going to have one big breakfast meal, and then we're not going to eat for 4 hours or 5 hours. And then I'm going to stock up then. And then heck, whatever you ate for breakfast hasn't even digested by the time you got to dinner. So we're just piling on and piling on. And if your body's constantly digesting, especially when we're trying to sleep at night, then your body can't heal. Sleeping, the time of sleeping is supposed to be your time for healing and not for digesting. So that's where I'm at with everything and why I've had these beliefs and where it came from for me. Now, obviously, getting into the whole athlete side of it, okay, plant protein versus whey protein. A lot of kids now, they're just getting filled with, you got to proteins. Like they're trying to make the skinny kids huge and they're trying to make the big kids skinny. And it's which one do you want? My son's almost, he's 6'3", 175 pounds. And it's college coaches are like, oh, we want to see another 25 pounds on him. And I'm like, how do you expect him to do that if he's eating properly? Not to mention he's playing basketball right now. So it's like he's starting to get into that worldly thinking again. I got to do protein shakes or creatine. I need to take creatine. Everybody's taking creatine, which if you remember when I was in high school, creatine was illegal. We weren't allowed to take it. If you got caught taking creatine when I was in high school or in college, you were getting suspended. But apparently now creatine's okay. Maybe they've got a cleaner version of it, or I don't know, but
Yeah. What else do you know about that? Because I know that's a popular item for the kids. And is there a certain age that would be safer than other ages or not?
for what? For
For
creatine?
creatine, yeah.
I personally don't like creatine, but I get it if there's other people around you taking. I mean, it's like when I was in the minor leagues, there was guys taking steroids. I never took anything. I was all natural. But guys that are taking steroids surpassing you or other guys, and you're like, maybe I should do it too. You know what I mean? So I get where parents and kids feel like that they need to do the same thing that everybody else is doing, which is take creatine. But in reality, um, that I'm pretty sure creatine has whey protein in it. Am I wrong?
I'm not sure, actually. I'm
I,
not
I
real
think it
familiar with
does.
it.
I think it does. And if that's the case, whey protein is dairy. So, um, you see these bodybuilders, right? Like Arnold Schwarzenegger, for one, he's now a fruitarian. He was a bodybuilder. He was meat, and now his body got broke down so much that he went off of the meat. And you're seeing these guys, their bodies are breaking down. It happened to me, when I was playing ball. So going a route of these protein shakes, a lot of them are dairy based. So you've got to be very careful. Yes, you're going to gain weight on those, but is gaining the weight worth giving up possible health inside the body? That acid that milk is, or that whey protein that dairy is causing, is going to break down the bones, break down the tendons, break down all of that stuff that you're trying to build up. So it's counteractive, essentially. You're going to gain the weight, but what are you giving up for it? I think that you could find a plant protein, which they do have them at like GNC. Plant protein based powders are great. What was trying to think of what I had him on? It was, oh man, it'll come back to me here in a second. But I had multiple plant protein based powders that my kids were doing while in the last few years. They're not the greatest tasting, and it wouldn't hurt to, a lot of times with the powder, you throw it in there, whatever flavor you're going with, you can add some fruit in there with it. But yeah, I'm not a fan of creatine. I don't trust it. I don't trust any protein that has dairy in it, which something we talked about before, Natalie, was breaking down the food pyramid. We've all been taught since kindergarten the food pyramid and what's on the food pyramid, the different categories. You have your breads, your pastas, your fruit, your meats, your dairy. And we're taught from a young age that you need to have a balanced diet. Milk does a body good, if you remember those commercials. And in reality, that's not what we want to be doing. And if you really think about it, we have a huge issue in this world of obesity, right? Obesity is a problem in the US. not necessarily worldwide, but in the US for sure. And I think it's because of the food quality, but it also has to do with what we're teaching. So if you think about it, like your breads, your pastas, your dairies, those will all bloat you up. You'll get bigger from them, because what do they all turn pasta, your breads, what do they all turn into? They turn into a complex sugar. No, not a simple sugar. Your fruit turns into a simple sugar. So I know that big argument when you tell people, hey, fruit's the way to go. Oh, my doctor says that's too much sugar. In theory, yes, but no, because our cell wall recognizes simple sugar and not complex sugar. So our cell wall allows simple sugar to come in and it gets used properly. When you have complex sugar, that gets stored, obviously, and then that gets stored as complex sugar, and obviously it turns into fat, things like that. So your breads, your pastas turn into complex sugar. Dairy is highly acidic. Your cheese, your milk. I can't remember the last time we've bought actually like real milk from the store and had it in our fridge for us to consume on a regular basis. We do oat milk, we've done almond milk, just getting away from the dairy as much as possible. And then you look at your meats. Obviously, we talked about meat. We touched base on that. Meat takes 5 to 7 days to break down. When John Wayne, if everybody knows who John Wayne is, the famous Western actor, when he passed away, they pulled 65 pounds of undigested meat out of his gut, which is
Crazy.
crazy to think
Scary.
about. And when I heard that, I was like, no way. I didn't believe it. But it makes sense how we can't digest it that quickly. Now we're like, okay, meat, we got to watch our intake on that. Dairy, we got to be very careful with that. Breads, we got to be very careful with that. So we're looking at the food pyramid. In reality, the only good thing on there is your vegetables and your fruits. And again, we talked about how your vegetables can be slow digesting, so you got to be careful there. What I've boiled it down to is everything in moderation. You don't have to live a life solely of fruit. If you want to, by all means. I certainly have a hard time doing it just because there's just so many other things that I like. But you can, instead of grabbing that Twinkie, you can say, okay, I'm gonna pop a couple grapes instead, or I'm gonna have some pistachios or some sunflower seeds or something of that nature. So like seeds and fruit is the way to go. And that's where I've learned what every food does in the body, so that I know, okay, if I'm gonna go have a bunch of cheese, I know it's gonna hurt a little bit later. I'm gonna be feeling it later. One way or another, I'm gonna pay for it. You know what I mean? That's where I'm coming from. That makes sense. And obviously, I know there's probably going to be questions and things like that. But
Okay. That's good. Thank you. That's a good, different perspective than what I know since talking to you, but I hadn't thought
yeah,
about it
right.
or heard about it before. I think, was there any other body food stuff that you wanted to share specifically before I share a little bit about my health story, and then we can circle back to questions?
At the moment, I can't think of nothing that comes to mind that I didn't touch base on already.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I
We'll
got everything
circle
covered.
back.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. I just want to share a little bit from my perspective from the health standpoint, because I'm not a professional athlete by any means. What my experience was, I ended up just finding out I had mold illness. But how that came about was I'd had a lot of allergy and sinus problems throughout my life, and constipation. I didn't realize that was even a problem. So Dan touched on this a little bit, but if you don't know this, please know this above anything else. You should be pooping at least once a day, if not 2 or 3 times a day. When I grew up, I thought it was normal to be going every few days, and that absolutely is not normal. You've got to be getting out the toxins and pushing your food through your body. So anyway, bullet pointing my health journey, I found out I had the mold illness. I was going to different doctors, and what helped me the most was changing the way I ate. I first removed gluten, so I was gluten-free for about 10 years. Then it was dairy. I was dairy-free for 9 years, and then grain-free for 3 to 4 years probably. So no oats, rice. I consider potatoes and corn more of a grain, so I don't eat those either. And I kept seeing improvements from the way changing my diet. And it wasn't easy, but when I knew I was healing, I made it happen and followed that. I also couldn't eat. So part of my symptoms were sensitivities to a lot of foods. So I couldn't eat tomatoes, bananas, avocados, and the healthy foods. There were other foods that I couldn't eat, and I'm starting to forget what they were, and I'm happy about that. But it was a lot of foods that I had to avoid. And at some point, I'm like, I know God did not create me to have to avoid all these foods, especially over the long term. So what is going on? And I went to different doctors, like alternative, holistic, and was getting more help that way. So ultimately, I did heal. I healed last February. It was through changes in my diet, through supplementation, and a lot of different things physically, but also it was a lot of faith stuff, teaching, learning, new learnings, prayers, deliverance, things of that nature. So I began to be able to eat whatever I wanted to last February. And so now, instead of being gluten, dairy, grain free, I am trying to do or basically eat 80% healthy, 20% is more relaxed. I don't want to say it's 20% unhealthy. It's just 20% is probably not as stringent or strict. So I do definitely eat more plants now, more whole foods. I try to aim for 50 to 60% fruits and vegetables in a day, 50% of my plate, 60% of my plate. I do eat meat. I do eat some carbs, but I minimize those because I know that they don't make me feel as good. And when Dan was talking about acidic environment in our bodies, that's where we get a lot of the inflammation from. And if you don't realize this, then any disease, condition, illness that we have can start with inflammation. Now, inflammation is a good thing when you're trying to heal an injury or you need inflammation to tell your body this is the place to heal. But when you're constantly in that inflamed mode and your body isn't resting, it's constantly digesting or it's constantly thinking it's fighting off something, then your body wears down and you can get sick. And what we're not taught is that foods can either hurt you or help you. And you can change so many things with the way that you eat, from hives and allergies and skin conditions to cancer and diabetes. People have reversed diabetes and reversed cancer by changing their diet primarily. So it is super powerful to do that.
Yeah, that is actually
And
one thing I forgot to mention earlier. It was my mom was having issues with fibromyalgia.
okay.
And she had I explained to her what we're talking about right now. She made a big change in her diet and her symptoms. She was able to go off of medication, not have symptoms anymore, just from that change. And it's not something a lot of people are like, oh, I have to eat this way the rest of my life. No,
Right.
fix the issue first and then do what you're doing. Find a good split, whether it's 50-50, 60-40, 70-30, whatever it is, where you can get in that pocket where you're healthy, but you can still enjoy the pleasures that you crave from a food
Mm-hmm.
standpoint. So yeah, I forgot to mention that between myself, my kids, my own mother, seeing the changes that it's made me realize that this is what I want to preach when somebody asks me about health and how to deal with being more healthy, making sure your body's not going to break down on you. And I don't mean to hijack more of your time, but in regards to talking about the acidity and the acidosis, for those of you that don't necessarily understand how the body works, we actually there's two main fluids that we have in the body. We have blood and we have lymph, right? Our blood gets pumped by the heart. Some people would say it's not the heart, but that pumps the blood. But either way, your blood gets pumped through the body because there is a pump in our system. And that your blood being pumped through is actually carrying all the toxins and everything back to be discarded. Your lymphatic system, however, I would ask everybody to look into the lymphatic system because it is not moved with the pump. When you go to the doctors because you have a sore throat, what's the first thing they do? They feel around your throat to see if your lymph nodes are swollen, right? And if your lymph nodes are swollen, obviously, like you were saying, everything starts with inflammation. So you have a sore throat, your throat's inflamed, and that's due to acidity from that lymph. That lymph is basically the lymphatic system is your, what's the word I'm looking for?
They call it your second circulatory system. Is that what you're thinking of?
No, it's actually like your garbage disposal essentially. And so we actually, everybody talks about like your kidneys filtering everything out. Your skin is actually your third kidney. Your skin will tell you if your kidneys aren't working properly or you're not hydrated to where your lymph is getting backed up. All right. So your lymphatic system, keeping that moving, um, that is your disposal. It's almost like a river in your body, right? If you keep that lymphatic system moving, then you're constantly getting rid of waste. But
Mhm.
if you're not staying hydrated through fruit, and hydration's not, it's very hard, especially with water, right? Hydration with water, you got to watch which water you're drinking. All right. You go drink water out of a fresh spring up on a mountain, and then you take a bottled water of Dasani and you tell me which one's going to be better for you. If you actually test waters like I have, you'll see how crazy they are on the pH scale. But so a lot of people think I'll just drink water constantly and keep myself hydrated and keep things moving. It doesn't work that way. So if you don't keep your lymphatic system moving through hydration, you're going to get backed up. And obviously, if you dam up a lake and it can't move, what ends up happening after that water is sitting there for so long? Bacteria starts to grow, it gets disgusting, it starts to stink, things like that. So that's where your acidosis sets in and you start having problems, whether it be, and we were talking about sicknesses and things like that when we were talking before, your common cold, your flu, your bronchitis, your strep throat, they're just a level of detox. So once your lymphatic system gets backed up enough, first off, it's going to come out in the skin, whether it be through cysts or pimples. You see some teenagers how they have crazy acne. It's because their kidneys aren't functioning properly. It has nothing to do with them going through quote unquote puberty. Yes, it's what they're eating. They're eating like junk, so it's coming out of their skin, out of their pores. It's going to come out in the most vulnerable way, wherever it can. We need to keep that lymphatic system moving, and the best way to do that is through hydration. Now, we were talking about, I was just saying about waters and how my wife tested this, that I have pH drops and I would always be testing waters until I finally found water that we were buying before we got the whole fridge water system. But you want to be in the 7+ for alkalinity when you're drinking your water. It's crazy when you look, and you can find people have done tests online, whether it's YouTube, TikTok, whatever. Dasani, the major brands, Aquafina, they're in like the 4.5 to 5 range on the pH scale, which is crazy, crazy, like high pH for water. They add salt to it, things like that. And it makes sense why they would sell them at baseball games and movie theaters, because it makes you more thirsty, makes you buy more. So it's really not solving the problem when you're thirsty, not to mention you're putting that acidic liquid into your body. For those of you who are looking into testing pH, test the pH of Gatorade. Back when Braden, my son, was having issues and he was drinking a lot of Gatorade for every game, and I was like, all right, I started testing waters. I'm going to test this pH in Gatorade. It's like a 4. It might even be a 3.5, like right there with soda. It's crazy how low the pH is and how detrimental Gatorade is in the body when they put all these athletes on TV drinking Gatorade and make it seem like it's good for you. So
Yeah.
I apologize. I wanted to
Oh,
chime in
no,
and
that's
touch
good.
base on all that.
That's good info. And the thing is, don't run out and don't drink all alkaline water. Your gut can be over alkalinized too, right? I think
Yeah,
mine was at one point way back when.
you do need a little bit of acid. Obviously, our stomachs have some acid content to them to break things down. It
Right.
doesn't hurt to have a little bit of acid. That's why if you were to take a shot of apple cider vinegar, it's actually good for the gut because you're
Yeah.
adding good acid, because there are good acids out there.
Hmm.
Like your lemons, your limes, those are good acids.
They actually alkalinize your body, even though they
Yes,
seem acidic.
exactly. They're acidic in nature, but they will alkalize the body. Yep.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's a good segue into the tips that I want to talk about because we have about 12 minutes and I'm going to try to breeze through these and I will put them up on the screen as so you can take screenshots once I get through my little list, and then we'll have some time for questions. And these tips are based on making improvements. So we're not saying to go change all of your diet overnight by any means. You have to figure out what works well for you. And I'm not asking you to do all of these things on this list, but take one or two from the list and just try to make little improvements to go forward so your body can be in the optimal form. Because when it's inflamed constantly, you guys, that's going to affect not just your physical health, but your mental health too. When I can have a whole different frame of mind and mental health, whatever my mindset is completely different if I'm eating healthy or if I'm eating a bunch of junk. So it does make a difference in how your mood is and how you feel as well. Okay, so two facts I want you to think about while we or before we go through this list of tips. And I'm asking you to think about these to keep an open mind going forward. But when I was doing research for my book, I found out that it can take 8 to 15 times of seeing a food before you will try it. And then it can take 10 to 12 more times of tasting a food before you like it. So, plus our taste buds change over the years. So don't give up on foods after trying them once or twice or 3 times or 5 times. Keep trying it over every year, every 6 months, and see how you like it. And there's different ways to prepare and cook foods too that make a difference in the flavor, but just don't give up on the food right away and be open-minded and a little bit adventurous.
Oh yeah,
And
when I started eating fruits, there was fruits that I didn't really care for, but I got
mhm,
tired of eating the same ones all the time. So I started to venture out just so it
mhm,
didn't get boring for me. And one of those things I wanted to make sure you guys knew, it takes 21 days to make a new habit
mm,
or break an old
yes.
one. I know for myself, whenever I have gone full fruit for a while just to try to heal my body faster, about the 2 week period is where I hit that wall. So if
Mhm,
you guys go straight from what you're doing now to a drastic change, it's going to feel great for the first few days. Even the
mhm.
first week, you're going to be like, oh man, this is amazing. I've got all this energy. I've got all this. I feel amazing. And then the second week, you're still going to feel good. And then that third week, you're going to start to crave. It's almost because we've been eating, depending on what your diet is, if you've been eating snack cakes and fried foods and things like that, I do feel like that they put something in it that's causing us to want that, to almost become addicted to it. So we have an addiction to food and you don't even realize it until you make that change. And then about that 2 week, 3 week period, you're hitting that, what's it called when somebody goes through withdrawal? You're hitting that
Yeah.
withdrawal period and you really have to fight to stay on track. And it's
Mhm.
extremely hard. So just know going into it that that's what you're going to deal with because I dealt with it. Sorry, I just wanted to chime in on
That's true.
that.
That's a good, like when I had to go off dairy and stuff, I would get headaches and so it's tempting to go back and just start eating whatever again, but you'll get through it. You just have
The
to.
the best way to get around it for me, and this was something that my former coworker, who's still my best friend to this day, he says the key to this is do not let yourself get hungry. If you
Mm,
let yourself get hungry, then you're going to start craving things that you shouldn't be having, especially if you're trying to stick to a plan. So if you're constantly if whatever your situation is work wise, let's say you're on the go constantly, have a small lunchbox or a couple baggies of fruit, snacks, whatever, seeds, whatever you want to be having that you can snack on. That way you're not like, oh, I'm just going to wait an hour or two for lunch, and then by the time you go to lunch, you're like, okay, screw it, I'm getting a cheeseburger. You know what I mean? Because
yeah.
because it's quick and it's fast. Yeah, that was a key one for me is he's don't let yourself get hungry. If you start to feel yourself getting hungry, eat a handful of grapes, eat a handful of blueberries, eat a handful of seeds, whatever it is that you're on at the time, and keep moving. And it tricks the brain into
Hmm.
thinking, okay, I just ate, so I'm satisfied. You can literally eat a handful and then your craving goes away for a little bit.
Okay. And you guys, Dan said fruits snacks. It was like fruit, snacks, not fruit snacks.
Yeah. When I say snacks, we want to try and be careful with nuts, but like sunflower seeds, like roasted sunflower seed kernels,
Mhm.
they're great. Seeds are fine. And obviously, any kind of fruit you can get your hands on is fine. And if you want to do nuts, like I said, just in moderation, almonds, walnuts are great for the brain. Obviously, they look like a brain for a reason. So, if you know anybody that's struggling with dementia or Alzheimer's, walnuts and blueberries, just
Mhm.
steady diet. Because I've seen stories where people have done that with their loved ones and they've actually started to regain memory. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
I'll have to remember that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So sorry, you can keep going. I didn't mean to interject there.
No, don't worry. That's why we're doing this together. Okay, so drink. So my rule of thumb is to drink half your weight in ounces each day. So if you weigh 100 pounds, you drink 50 ounces of water at the minimum. And we already talked about the quality of water. If you're drinking, so if you weigh 200 pounds, that's 100 ounces of water each day. If you're drinking caffeine or outside or exercising a lot, which you are because you're active, then you want to up the water that you drink. And you can, and Dan's probably thinking it doesn't have to be that much water if you're eating more fruit, which could very well be the case. You want to
Yeah, if you here's the thing, you probably don't have to drink as much water either. If you, like I was telling you how I added frozen fruit to my son's water, you can do that and get more electrolytes out of it and killing two birds with one stone essentially. If you are having fruit, you don't necessarily need to do as much water, because water more or less, you're getting very little minerals and things like that from the water. Drinking and not to go against what you're saying, but drinking a lot of water, you're more or less flushing the system more so than anything. So I would say for hydration purposes, you want to do more fruit, and you can do frozen fruit in the water, things like that. Find a way to get it in. Take a bunch of frozen fruit and put it into a blender, and there you got yourself a nice fruit, plant protein based smoothie. But yes, you do want to drink water. Obviously, whenever I'm thirsty, I try to stick to as much water as I can. I probably have about 6 of these a day at least. And that's just always water. I try to stay away from doing anything outside of water unless it's like a fruit juice. Like we constantly have apple cider, orange juice, grape juice in our fridge at any point in time, and they crush it every week, and I have to buy a bunch every week.
Okay. And so along those lines, we've given you alternatives for the electrolyte drinks, the Gatorades. Just get rid of those. They have a lot of food dyes and stuff like that in there that is bad for you. If you do choose to do something like the Gatorade, I would suggest BioSteel or Body Armor. They're at least better brands. They don't have the food dyes in them. Don't have caffeine 8 hours within bedtime, because it can have an effect for 8 hours. And even though you can say, I'll go straight to sleep, it doesn't affect me at all, it can very much be interrupting your sleep and you don't realize it. It's just not ideal to have close to bedtime. Oh, and I wanted to say something about this, because a lot of people, and especially grown-ups, are saying, I have to have my coffee in the morning to get moving and stuff. The more you tell yourself that you need something, the more you're going to need it. Like you shouldn't need coffee to get yourself going. Then there's probably something else going on with your body, in my opinion. I haven't been a morning person. I don't drink caffeine in the morning. I can find a way to get myself moving. So if I can do it, you can do it. Don't get into the habit that you have to have coffee or other things, your energy drinks. That's not a good habit. There's nothing in energy drinks that's good for you at all. So in general, I would minimize foods and drinks with the food dyes. I don't like food dyes at all. They're not even allowed in many countries. There's a reason for that. Like the yellow 5, the blue 1s, the red 3s, whatever. I think I got those backwards. But a lot of the Gatorades have those and other drinks. And even our shower soaps and products have dyes in them that are not good for us. It's not likely that you're going to completely get rid of them because it's in so many things. But if you can just be mindful to minimize that and maybe make a different choice here and there, then you're doing yourself a little bit better. The dyes are known to hinder your concentration and your ability to focus. So that is not going to help you in the game and in your learning. It's just not going to help you. Watch for products that have a lot of added sugar, the sugar substitutes, the things like sorbitol ending in the TOL. Those are fake sugars and those are not good for you. The corn syrups.
Real quick,
Eat,
Natalie.
yes.
Hey, one thing I didn't mention earlier, when we're talking about the hydration side of things, right?
Mhm.
With fruit, athletes, for those that are athletes that are listening, guys, you're going to recover faster. The more hydrated you are, the faster you're going to recover. When you do any type of
That's
physical activity, you're creating an acidic environment in that area, right? Lactic acid in the shoulder after you pitch a game, things like that. If we're staying hydrated and you're allowing your body to filter and flush that stuff out, then you're going to recover faster. I'm telling you this in the last 5 or 6 years, and my wife sitting is right next to me and she can attest to this. How often do you hear Braden complain about his arm being sore? Never. The kid never has arm problems.
No,
And
that's
I
good.
think that's a testament to how well he takes care of himself. And I wish I would have known these things when I was younger. Even if I would have learned it when I was in professional baseball, I think my career would have made it. Granted, I felt like I had a very good career, but could have been a lot better and possibly not ended from an injury, had I known what I know now. So this is, why I want to pass as much on as I can to those who are willing to listen. So sorry, go ahead and
Don't
keep going.
apologize. Okay. We're landing the plane here soon, you guys, if you can bear with us just for a few more things. I see your question, April, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. But Dan said, instead of eating the chips, the pastries, the cookies, the gas station, fast food, eat more the nuts, the seeds, a healthier jerky, even sun butter, almond butter, if you don't do peanut butter. Sun butter is a sunflowers or seeds, so you can do a sun butter, and there's no nut allergy associated with that. Have your raw veggies and fruits, cut them up and wash them on Sundays and Wednesdays or whatever, and just have them ready to grab and go with you and put them in the car with you to eat after the game. Even if you do hit the fast food after a game, at least you also got your raw veggies and fruits also. And then there are healthier versions of protein shakes. I know I've seen like the Orgain brand in Costco. We use Juice Plus shakes. Is that the one you like? Okay.
Hemp protein is what I had the kids take initially, and you can even find it at Walmart. It's actually in the grocery aisle. It's actually, I think when I bought, obviously you have to try to mask the taste of it because it doesn't taste good. But hemp protein is amazing
Okay.
for the body, and I think it was like $7 or $8 when I bought it for a container. So
Okay.
yeah, hemp protein. That's what I was trying to get out earlier, and I couldn't think of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's snack tips, you guys, in general, just little swaps you can do. So let's talk about meals briefly. World in our family growing up with the kids who were younger, this kind of has changed a little bit as they've gotten into their own independent minds. But we would say 2 or 3 proteins per day, 2 fruits, 2 vegetables at minimum. We eat and consume a lot more than that, but do not even ask me for a treat unless you've had those things first. So, and then it was like 1 treat per day. A treat would be a cookie, a piece of cake, a soda. Those are all treats. Again, that's not reality right now with having 2 teenagers. But when you start practicing those habits, it sticks with you. So for instance, Jason, my younger one, he was on vacation with a friend and the mom was impressed that he didn't eat ice cream one night. Actually, I was impressed. I've never seen that kid turn down ice cream, but he said he had a soda earlier in the day and he didn't need ice cream that night. So that you can practice the self-control, and you don't have to make that choice every time, but it becomes a little bit more second nature just to even think about it and make a better decision. And not, there's plenty of days where he'll eat 2 or 3 treats, but I'm just saying at least some of the time you're being more mindful about it.
Big thing is
Protein.
though, guys, if you're going to have a cheat day, for example, and you're going to be regimented and you're going to have 2 extra cookies or have an extra soda or whatever the case may be, one thing I've noticed, at least with my kids, is you cannot punish yourself
Mm,
for it
yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's just going to turn you the opposite direction. You know what I mean? I know, like with my son, he obviously fruit's not every meal. He eats other things, but he always has fruit with every meal. He eats breakfast in the morning. First thing he does is fruit. He gets fruit in his lunch. He comes home from school and he may grab some muffins, but he eats fruit first. So he
Mm-hmm.
always has his fruit first with almost every single meal. And it's great that he does that and he's gotten into that repertoire of doing that, especially because my mom, who recently started having some more issues, reached out to me and she was getting like an inflammation or acidic reflux
Reflux.
in her throat. And I'm like, what are you eating? And she went through a list of everything. And I'm like, okay, what you're saying you're eating does not sound bad. I don't understand why you're having this problem. And I'm like, wait a second, what order are you eating your food in? And she's, I usually eat my fruit last. And I'm like, that makes sense. You're eating your slower digesting foods first, and then you're eating your faster digesting foods, which aren't digesting as fast as they should be. So they're sitting on top and they're
Mm-hmm.
fermenting and it's causing that acid reflux. That's why my son eats his fruit first most of the time, is so you don't get that acid
I was
reflux.
going to ask you about that because,
Yeah.
yeah, I've heard that too. Okay.
Yep.
Good
Yep.
point.
So, yeah, but my main part of that was just don't punish yourself if you go off the rails or for a day. All right, it's okay. It's not like, oh, you're the worst person in the world because you went off of your diet for a day. It's not a big deal. Just get back on track on the next one.
And that's like the 80-20 thing is you don't want to make it so stressful for yourself that, but when stress adds inflammation too. So you don't want to make it that stressful on yourself. Just to proteins, healthy proteins. I just wanted to name a few because you know this, but let me just make it familiar. Like in a meal is to us as a healthy protein and a vegetable often. And if you're Dan, you would definitely eat the fruit first. Proteins, chicken, wild caught fish, beef, turkey, pork, lamb, veal, eggs, beans.
My first go-to would be fish for me.
Fish, yeah. What do
Yeah.
you think about eggs? April's asking, what do we think about eggs? I eat a lot of eggs personally, but
I do too. I like them. I know as we get older, we got to watch the cholesterol, but I personally do like eggs. My son has taken a liking to eggs. He does eggs as well, so I'm okay with that.
mhm.
Again, I mean everything in moderation, but I would say that it's one of the better of the protein. Either way, it's a chicken.
And we eat beans like the navy, the kidney, black beans, and then I aim for my plate, 50% of my plate to be veggies, if not more. You can eat veggies in different ways, raw, grilled, sauteed, roasted. You can air fry them. Don't give
Yeah,
up if you don't like it one way. I did not like sweet potatoes for 42 years. I did not like them at all. And then finally, I think Jamie grilled them, sliced them and grilled them, and they were al dente. I like them that way. If they're mushy, I will not eat them. I do not like them at all. I don't like the Thanksgiving style sweet potatoes. So point being, just don't give up on a food just because you've tried it one way and you didn't like it.
my son just introduced me to asparagus about 6 months ago, and now I can't stop eating it.
It's got to be al dente too in our house.
But I would say this, guys, if you just want to go down the rabbit hole just a little bit deeper, raw versus cooked when it comes to your vegetables. Anytime you cook your vegetable, you're going to lose about half of its energy that it's providing to you.
Yeah.
Just so you guys know that. It's not a bad thing. Just letting, if you want to go down that rabbit hole and look at the energy that foods give off when you're eating it, because obviously fruit is a live thing. You're eating live energy there. Same with a raw vegetable. When you eat meat, if you actually look at the energy, which is apple versus a dead meat, there's obviously a different type of energy field there. You know what I mean?
That's true.
I'm not going to go too far into that because that's getting out
Right.
there, but
Right. Okay. And then otherwise, just salads are good. You can get calcium from the salads when you're not getting it from your milk. You can get tons of nutrients from different leafy greens. Look for healthier dressings that don't have the corn syrup in them.
balsamic vinegar is
Hmm.
my favorite go-to.
Hmm.
Watch the ranch, watch the French, if it's anything like a clear or brown, oily type is a little bit better than the thick, creamy type of dressing.
Right.
Because then you're getting away from the dairy again.
Right. Brown or white rice is good for a meal, and I like to throw in more veggies with it, but Ian's happy eating. He's, Mom, you can make this anytime and I'll eat it. Rice beans, I'll add some cucumber, lettuce, whatever. You can make different varieties of it, and it's cheaper than meat too. Try sweet potatoes instead of potatoes. Those are the tips that I wanted to share with you. And I'm going to put up the slides with those tips, you guys, if you want to take screenshots while we're having a few questions. Thank you guys for hanging with us a little bit longer. Dano is saying using a juicer is great. So thank you for that contribution. If you guys have other tips, feel free to unmute and share those. If you have questions or whatever, unmute. And also, what did you learn that you thought was helpful? What do you think you might try doing to improve your diet choices? Anybody have questions or comments? Can you see the slides okay if you want to take a screenshot?
I've always heard that body armor was really bad for you. So I was really surprised when you mentioned that it's better than Gatorade, Natalie.
In my opinion, it doesn't have the dyes in it. I was looking at the ingredients today. I don't think that it's fantastic, but I like BioSteel better.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Dan's suggestion with putting the frozen fruit in the water.
It's
And
definitely more affordable.
I think that's the reason why we went that route. It wasn't necessarily an affordable issue. I think it was more so just I couldn't find anything that I felt comfortable once realizing how these big companies are obviously selling this and promoting it to do X, Y, and Z, and it's really not even doing that. I think that's why we ended up going that route where I'm just like, look, let's just put the frozen fruit into the water and go from there. Yeah, I don't know much about Body Armor or any other brands, so I can't speak on them. I know Body Armor is one of the bigger ones, but yeah, that's where I'm at.
It's not ideal. I'm just trying to be realistic with people that are going to still stop at the gas station. If you're going to do that, then buy the better versions. Dan says he's shocked about fruit. Do you want to elaborate on that, Dan?
no, that was me.
What's that?
Oh, I'm sorry. That was you. Okay.
I was going to tell you, Jackson is in the kitchen right now. That's the athlete cutting up a pomegranate.
Ooh,
We're
nice.
There you go.
We're inspired by the fruit.
Yeah, and make sure you broaden your horizons. You've got so many different fruits to choose from. I don't know, you guys, I'm guessing everybody in here is from Maryland, or
I think Kara's from St. Louis,
okay.
Missouri.
I mean, I don't know what kind of gas stations they have out there, but we up in Pennsylvania near Pittsburgh, we have Shop and Save and we have Giant Eagle, and that's pretty much it in my area. So Giant Eagle is the best we've got for produce. I know down in Maryland they have, what is it? What's that one off of 26?
Sheets and Rudders, pies.
Wegmans. You guys have Wegmans.
Grocery store.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about.
Their produce section's amazing. When I walked in there, I was like, oh, it's like heaven. And it just reminded me, outside of water for athletes, coconut water is amazing. And not everybody likes coconut, but if you like coconut, I love coconut water. It is one of the most hydrating things you can drink.
Natural electrolyte.
Yep. Pure coconut water.
I wouldn't be able to do that.
But yeah, April, that's great. He likes the pomegranates, grapes, blueberries, honeydew, cantaloupe, watermelon, apples, bananas. Oh my goodness. Trying to think of oranges. Yeah. Oranges are great. I'm trying to think of what else we do in our house fruit wise. Oh, pineapple. There's just so many options. And that's what I love about this aspect of fruit is that it almost, you don't get tired of it because you can always grab something different. How many ways? I'm sure there's a million different ways to cook a steak, but it's still steak is steak. Chicken is
Mhm.
chicken. How many different types of chicken can you eat versus fruit?
All right, guys, thank you for joining, and we'll share the replay as you wish. And I guess I don't have anything else to add, but just be encouraged and don't be overwhelmed. Just pick a couple things that you might want to start with and go from there. Just aim for that 21-day marker to really get it ingrained. And Dan, thanks a ton for sharing all of this great information with us and just giving us the advice and the knowledge that you have.
Absolutely. I appreciate you. Excuse you. I appreciate you guys having me, and this was fun, and I'd be happy to do it again sometime.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind.
All right.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Oh,
Thank
you're welcome.
you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Holly, take care. Bye.
Bye.